This week's guest, Mark Niemiec, CRO at SalesLoft, talks about why selling is not the role of a salesperson. Love this conversation. Reminded me of a Brian Tracy quote where he said, approach each customer with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem, not of selling a product or service. Tracy's point being, your main goal as a salesperson is to help your customers. And if you demonstrate how your product solves their problem, they're going to buy. Mark also talks about the importance of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the sales process and why, if and when you are winning, you need to put your foot on the gas and keep going. Take a listen. Oh, yeah. Please let us know you're out there. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, comment, like, and repost on LinkedIn. Let's go. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Today's guest welcomes complex problems. He's a go-to-market leader who believes the role of sales is to help customers actually solve their problems. He's built teams that have done this time and time again. He's done it at stellar companies like Cisco and Salesforce, and currently he's the Chief Revenue Officer at SalesLoft. Mark Niemiec, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Thanks so much. Really happy to be here today.
Awesome, Mark. Great to have you as well. We'll jump right into it. I know you've been there, done that, and have some of the scars and can tell a lot of the stories. You've probably also heard a lot of myths. Mark, what's a myth in this profession of sales and sales leadership? A myth that you believe is misguided, maybe even complete BS?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. There are so many myths, I think, that they could cast upon sales and sales leaders, or sellers and sales leaders, I should say. Lots of folks who haven't been in the profession, they think it's easy, or they think it's about, orchestrating meetings or buying lunch or things like that. Or they think it's about waiting by the fax machine and waiting for orders to come in. None of those things are true. Every job, I think, there's a certain amount of challenge in any job. And, I think about this from an economic perspective. We pay based on the difficulty and the value of the job, right? And so we wouldn't pay salespeople what we pay them if the job were easy. And we do pay them quite well in general because the job's really, really hard. I read something the other day about sales is whether or not it's a skill. And the person's perspective was sales isn't a skill. Sales is a collection of skills. And I think that really captures it well, because I think in your opening, you talked about how I believe that salespeople's jobs are to help people solve problems. And I do believe that. I think sales is a measurement of your ability to solve those problems. It's not the job itself. But the job is project management. It's really deep listening. It's really, sort of deep creativity. It's collaboration and teamwork. It's hustle in some ways. All those things are part of the sales role and the sales leader role. And when done well, what those skills, when you put them together, what happens is you've got really, really great problem solvers who can listen deeply to customers and help them solve problems, sometimes that they knew they had, sometimes that they didn't know they had. And so great salespeople are problem solvers, first and foremost. They're professionals. They care deeply about customers and creating long-lasting, enduring relationships. That's been my experience. And so I think when folks think of sales, sometimes there's some common perceptions in the market that, hey, salespeople are, waiting for orders, or salespeople are, just sort of glorified admins or something like that. That's not been my experience. And I think it's a bit of a dangerous myth. And it doesn't quite, provide the credit to the salespeople or the sales leaders that work so hard every day to help both their companies and their customers solve problems. And I think that's what salespeople do. Great ones do every day.
And Mark, I think it may be refreshing for many sales professionals to hear that my job is to help customers solve problems, right? That may be, I think that expresses the desire of a lot of folks that you and I have worked with. But my experience has been that many salespeople struggle to view it through that lens. And as a result, oftentimes do things like jump to the demo, show up and throw up.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah. I think that comes down to some coaching. I think it comes down to folks don't quite necessarily understand the mindset of the buyer. I think oftentimes we go through sales trainings and we put so much emphasis on doing the demo the right way or talking about all of our features or benefits. I think those are the skills that we focus on because those are the skills that are unique to my company. So when I bring a salesperson and I want to train them on all those things, the things that are foundational are oftentimes not considered as part of sales training. Like, how do you listen? How do you let the customer know you're listening? How do you make sure you're capturing what you're hearing and that you repeat it back in a way that allows the customer to know you're understanding and empathizing with them? My experience is a lot of sales training focuses on product demonstration and the company narrative, and those things are super important. They're absolutely required. But there's a I think of it in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's sort of a triangle of needs there, and the foundational need is that you deeply listen to your customer, that you really thoroughly understand your product, and that you understand how to connect what your product does to what the customer's challenges are. I think those are the first three things that need to happen in any sales training, in any sales sort of philosophy. After that, you can get into the demo and the features and the benefits and some of those things. I think oftentimes we miss the bottom of the triangle because maybe we assume, hey, if you've gotten to this level, well, you know those things. I think like anything, you have to take batting practice always, right? The home run hitter does not take batting practice because he or she knows how to hit home runs really well. They keep hitting those home runs, and so I think asking great questions, listening deeply, and then continually training on how you understand and listen for challenges and how you connect those to the capabilities of your product, your platform, or the perspective you've developed as a salesperson are some of the skills that we would do better to reinforce and encourage more with our sales folks. I think we oftentimes, the reason we get to the point you described is we go to show up and throw up too quickly or some of those things. I think that's part of how we're training our people because we want to get to the solution that we spent so much time, effort, and money building. And so we want our salespeople to know about that. But I think there's a couple steps that have to happen in advance.
So you've been quoted as saying sales is not the job of a salesperson, right? Sales, and I may be missing it a little bit, but sales is not your job. Are you saying it's that bottom of the pyramid, the asking questions, the listening, the connecting the dots to the customer's problem? That's the job, and the byproduct of that is sales. Is that what you mean by that quote?
Centrally, it's a pithy statement to get people's attention a little bit, but yeah, I think sales is the outcome. Or revenue is the byproduct of solving problems. And so we think oftentimes that salespeople, they associate sales with revenue or sales with money and things like that. I think that's more the measurement of the job. And at the end of the day, companies make products and services to solve problems. Those problems, when solved, should provide some economic benefit. When the manufacturer delivers that benefit, they should be able to collect some compensation for it. And that's, if you look at it truly, what the industry is doing, that's really what's happening. We're providing a product or service that helps you make money, save money, reduce risk. And there's economic value to each of those things. We put salespeople in position to go capture that economic value by delivering some solution to a problem the customer has. And so the job, if you think about it from that perspective, sure, we need to sell things. And I'm not suggesting that, oh, hey, we're just here to solve problems. And, it's if we make money, great. If we don't, that's okay too. That's
Right.
not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is when we put the make money thing first, we miss the point. And the point is to create economic value. The economic value happens when you help a customer either increase their position in the market, make money, save money by taking out costs or something like that, or putting them in a different risk position because that has its own economic value. And so those are really the things that products and solutions are designed to do at some level. And salespeople's jobs are to connect the dots between, hey, the product we built or we make and the issues that you're having, can deliver some economic value when you put them together. That's really what you want a salesperson to do. And that's why I love the quote from I can't remember who it's by, but that said, "Sales isn't a skill; it's a collection of skills." And that's true. I think there's a ton of things that go into being a great salesperson, and any one of those skills is a job, right? To be a great project manager is a job and a career. To be a great salesperson, you have to be a really good project manager. To be, a great presenter is a job. That is one part of the skill you need to be a salesperson. And so there's so many things that you basket into that role of sales that I think just sort of thinking about the person as a salesperson misses the point. They're a problem solver, and of course they need to capture economic benefit for the problems they're solving, and of course that needs to benefit their employer. Those things are certainly givens. But I think when salespeople step back and think about their role as problem solver, they get to a much more sort of basal understanding of what it is they do, which is we're here to solve problems and deliver economic benefit to our customers and in turn our companies. And when we do that, we end up with a really enduring set of customer relationships, with a really enduring economic, sort of product or business, and we end up with a really long-standing, relationship with our customers where we're invited back in to help solve other problems, and that's really the dream of creating a great company is being invited back to solve your customers' problems over and over and over again.
And so, Mark, you talked about sales being a collection of skills. So, if we extrapolate that out a little bit, we could say sales leadership is also a collection of skills. Where do you see sales leaders struggling the most? And if you want me to you can go anywhere with that. But if you want me to focus it, let's talk about frontline sales leaders. Where do you see them being challenged the most, whether they're brand new or been doing it for a little while?
Yeah. There's a bunch of areas where folks, where there's some opportunity for skill building that may be a little bit counterintuitive. You know, Oftentimes we expect our salespeople to deliver revenue in a certain time frame, right? The time frame for delivering revenue is always something that's under pressure. And so sometimes we look at sales managers, or sales managers look at their jobs and say, hey, my job is to deliver the quarter. And yes, certainly that's true. But how you deliver the quarter and at what point you decide the strategy or the steps you're going to take to deliver the quarter, that really matters. And so oftentimes, folks that are earlier in career in sales leadership will think it's their job to do the job of the salesperson because they've got to deliver the quarter. And you see that all the time. And sometimes, certainly there's a point in time in which the salesperson or the sales leader needs to step in and take the reins. That is no doubt that is true in some of the cases. But more often than not, we as sales leaders need to let our teams do the job, and we need to be there to coach and support, move obstacles, provide guidance, maybe provide some higher level relationships inside the account, and give our salespeople space to do their jobs. Now, if you wait too long to do that, you're going to be in a tough situation where the pressure to perform is going to be too great, and you're going to end up in a situation where you have no choice but to take the wheel. But if you think about that early on and think about the skills that you're helping your team build, the philosophy with which you're approaching the business, and the ways that you're coaching your team, you can instill those capabilities earlier on, so your salespeople are in the right position to close the right deal at the right time. Sometimes salespeople just skin their knee a little bit. Sometimes you got to miss something. Those lessons that come with those disappointments oftentimes are the most foundational to both sellers and sales leaders in terms of how they're going to execute their duties as they go forward. If you never made any mistakes, you're never going to learn any lessons. And so, I grew up playing hockey, and I remember one of the coaches saying we're doing crossovers. Let's see, left to right, which is not the way most kids grew up doing them. And the coach was saying, "Hey, look, if you guys aren't falling down, you're not trying hard enough." And I think there's a truism in that. I remember that when I was probably 10 years old, and it sticks with me. I think about that quote every day. And that is oftentimes what our sales leaders need to be willing to coach our teams to the point where they're going to fall down sometimes. That's where you learn what your limits are. That's where you learn where your new skills development opportunities are. That's what's going to teach you how important it is to focus on some of the foundational skills that are going to help you do your job when the times are really, really tough. So I think those are some of the things that sales leaders can do to help their teams, and sometimes it's letting them fail a little bit. Oftentimes, though, you're going to have to be there side by side with them and coaching and guiding along the way. It's rarely the job of the sales leader to be completely hands off and it's never the job of the sales leader to be, gripping too tight. And the skill and the elegance in that job is really finding that balance.
Yeah. Laissez-faire versus micromanage
Wow.
in your grill all the time, for sure. I saw something very interesting this morning, actually, and my wife sent to me. It was a video clip for the CEO of NVIDIA,
Mm,
and I think Jensen Huang is his name. And what caught my attention was that he was talking about his organization and that he does not believe in one-on-ones.
yeah.
He doesn't believe in one-on-ones. Perhaps that's because he's got 60 direct reports. But anyway, excellent, crazy successful company, brilliant man from all accounts. Doesn't believe in one-on-ones, and the reason why that caught my attention is because we build a business, a coaching business that talks about one of the most sacred meetings in let's say a week with a manager and his or her people is the one-on-one. How important do you believe one-on-one coaching is in sales?
Yeah, I think there's tons of different philosophies out there and different ways to do any job. And you start with one of my sort of quotes around, "Hey, sales is not your job." He doesn't believe in one-on-ones. I'm sure that doesn't mean he doesn't speak to his leaders on a one-on-one basis, and I'm sure that probably means he talks to them more ad hoc, and things are a little bit more flexible and fluid in that organization, or I would imagine at least. I do think those one-on-one conversations are super important for the way that we run our business and the way I've run mine. Oftentimes, they're not necessarily um, deeply structured meetings. Sometimes they're getting to know you meetings. Sometimes they're personal discussions. Sometimes they're, hey, I got a problem. How are you thinking about this? Sometimes I ask them, hey, I've got a problem. I'd like your perspective on this. So they're really a chance to build connection with your team, to build empathy and to understand exactly where they are in their journey and how you can be helpful to them. So I do find one-on-one super helpful, but the format and the shape of them oftentimes changes depending on could be the time in the year, it could be the state of the business, it could be the state of the relationship. But I do think those connections are super important, and oftentimes we discuss things that may not be sort of traditional one-on-one content, right? It may be, hey, we're thinking about doing something different. I'd love your perspective on it, or hey, we're thinking about bringing a new product to market or building a new route to market. Would love your perspective. Sometimes it's about, hey, I want to talk about a deal, or I want to talk about how you're managing your team, or I want to talk about what you're seeing in the market. But the topics vary, and I think the most important part of that one-on-one is that sort of connection and empathy building between the leader and the person that they're leading.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And just to add a little bit of color on that interview, his perspective was that there's nothing that he should be talking about with one person that everybody else shouldn't hear.
Yeah.
Again, different business, different
Yeah.
context, but it did catch my attention. Figured you'd be a great person to ask.
Yeah.
So, Mark, are there any Markisms or beliefs that over time you find maybe a little bit more controversial than you initially thought, that some people may have a hard time initially getting and rallying around?
Well, I think the first one you opened up with is one that gets people's attention sometimes, that sales isn't your job. I've certainly, you've certainly gotten some different perspectives on that. I mentioned earlier, but I do think in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit, and in sales, the sort of the foundational elements of what we do are immutable. In the sales business, pipeline is the ultimate sort of bottom of the triangle. It is like food, air, and water. We absolutely need it to survive. But we all want to live at the top of the triangle, where we're helping customers solve super complex problems, where we're invited in as experts, where our customers value our point of view, and really think about our guidance over and above other folks' guidance. Everybody wants to live there. That's the top of the triangle. We call that self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But there's oftentimes, the steps that get us there. We've got to have, again, the pipeline. We've got to have the relevant products. We've got to have the right relationships. We've got to have we've got to be meeting our quota, some of those sorts of things. We've got to have the ability to translate those customers' needs into the solutions that we can provide. Once you can do all those things, you can get to that top of the triangle where everybody wants to live. Oftentimes we see salespeople at that top of the triangle and say, "Hey, I just want to be there." And so here's maybe a bit of a controversial view. Folks, they train for that skill. And I think that gets back to some of the things we talked about earlier, where when you train for just that skill, you end up with maybe a sales engagement model that you didn't expect, where our salespeople might show up and throw up trying to prove value, that kind of stuff. This stuff is building over years and years, the skills, the experiences, and the relationships with our customers to be able to get to that point. That just takes time, and it takes sometimes a little bit of luck, and it takes a really good team to help kind of get there. And so, I'm a big believer in close and tight relationships within our teams, small teams that are there to solve really, really complex problems for customers. I think those teams are really important. It's important for those teams are to be connected personally and closely, where they have a sense of trust and belonging and care for one another's well-being. I think those things are really important to bringing together groups of folks to solve really complex problems. Things they're gonna go wrong, right? They're gonna go off the rails. You're gonna get curveballs that you might not have expected. And in order to weather through those challenges, you've got to be in a position where you have a lot of trust with your team, care for one another's well-being, and consideration or respect for the skills they all bring to the team.
And it must be well, I think it's obvious. I don't want to be Captain Obvious to say that it's challenging to suss that out. Let's say in the interview process when you're promoting people, but how do you go? How do you go about doing that? Is there a guideline that you use? Is there a go-to question? Is there something, a starting point where you start to say, how to start to approach to understand whether this person has the ability to do the things that you just described?
Yeah. Well, there's different ways to bring people onto a team. Sometimes I think what you're talking about a little bit is bringing folks in from the outside in, and in that interview process, sometimes it's about forming or reforming that team once you've had an experience with them. So it's an old saying that you're always interviewing. I think that is completely true. And so when you have somebody in your company or organization, you get to see their body of work over time, which is the best way to evaluate somebody. They're not necessarily in a sort of a performative environment that is an interview. You get to see, sort of a longitudinal view of how they operate in different situations. And you can really get a sense of how well that team member will collaborate with the broader team. And that may be an easier way to get a sense of who you should pick or add to the team. When interviewing somebody from the outside, I think of this as the sort of layers of the job, right? There's, can we evaluate this person to come in and do the job to go be a salesperson? And that's something that we can evaluate in an interview process with a reasonable degree of certainty. But then once you're in, there is in my business, there's always been a grouping of folks who go do the really, really hard and complex things. We rarely hire for those people from the outside. We hire people that become salespeople, join the team, sales engineers, value engineers, sort of different functions, whether it's business value or others. We hire folks to do the job that we've outlined and designed. Oftentimes, we will take groupings of those people and organize them into a smaller team to go solve some really, really complex problems. And those folks are oftentimes the sort of tip of the spear that's going to solve some problem for our business that eventually will become metabolized into the business, where that'll become the common standard way of working. And so that is a methodology I've used to great success over the years. We hire traditional sales engineering value folks. We put them in a role where they're going to do that job. And then over time, we're going to reform the folks that we think are the best to solve a really, really complex problem. And that oftentimes is the group that sort of blazes the trail for the future of the company. We're doing that here at SalesLoft. We formed recently a strategic accounts team. And we took some existing talent that we had that we thought was really, really adept at being flexible and creative and thoughtful and solving some really, really complex problems for our customers. We brought in some talent from the outside who have had many years of working experience with, and we're bringing that small group together to go solve some interesting and complex problems for us and for our customers. It's rare that I would take groups of folks that I haven't had experience with in the past and hire them into that role. But oftentimes you can bring them together once they're already in the company.
Yeah. And there's no need to, right? Probably between what you have in your company and your experiences working at other companies, you can cast a pretty wide net. Um, Mark, you talk about, let's say, promoting people from within, which means you get to observe them in action, right? What's something that somebody has done to impress you in fairly recent memory?
Yeah, lots of things here at SalesLoft. We've got so many talented folks, and I'm impressed every day by them. It's oftentimes the person that can listen really deeply and share a perspective, ask a question, or a point of view that others might not have considered. It's certainly that sometimes that quiet person in the room that isn't necessarily the loudest voice,
Right.
that shares a really insightful point of view. And what it tells me about them is that they're really, truly, deeply listening to the folks in the room, and bringing together that perspective that they've built on their own with what they're hearing. When I see the opposite happen, somebody coming in with a pre-built point of view that they may not be willing to give up, that's not a skill that's always super impressive. But it's that person that's able to listen deeply, and come up with maybe a new idea or synthesize a new idea or approach that hadn't been previously considered. That to me is always super impressive.
Mm. Yeah. Thinking outside the box, bring a problem, a solution to a problem that nobody's talked about in the past, the new way of doing things, right? The lifeblood of an organization. So in doing what you've been doing at a high level for a long time, I'm sure you have some battle scars, for lack of a better phrase. What's a painful lesson that you've learned along the way, in your career, that you wish you had learned sooner, or at least you'd maybe impart to someone else so that they could maybe sidestep that pothole?
Oh, many painful experiences, many great ones. The one I would offer is slow down. We tend to think that we've got to move quickly. We've got to go do the thing really really fast. And in some cases, time is of the essence, and the quarters and the months and the years definitely matter. But when you step back and look at the macro of the career of my time, it's oftentimes you slow down. The right answer will come. Give people some space to come up with it, and it'll certainly more than likely you'll find the right answer. When we move too quickly, we can make mistakes. We tend not to consider all the variables. We tend not to get all the voices in. And so the lesson I've learned is to slow down and make sure that you got to give everybody a chance to participate. Now that doesn't mean analysis paralysis. It doesn't mean wait and wait and wait and never make a decision. But oftentimes it means you probably have more time to make the decision than you think, and you probably have an opportunity to get that one more conversation in than you might have considered when you were prioritizing timing. Those are some general kind of truisms. The other one is, when you're winning, keep going. I find oftentimes that, it happened to me in my career. The hardest time to make a cold call or to build pipeline is after a successful quarter or when you think you have enough. You never have enough. You always need more. And because things will happen that are going to disappoint you, frustrate you. Folks are going to change priorities on you. And so keep going is probably the advice. Next bit of advice I'd offer is, even when you're where you think you should be, keep going out and building pipeline, building new relationships, talking to folks, because you're always going to need those things. Next quarter is going to be here faster than you know it. Next year is going to be here faster than you know it. You're going to need pipeline for those events as well.
Never leave a hot table, as they say. uh, Mark, Simon Sinek said, a leader's job is not to do the work for others. It's to help others figure out how to do it themselves, to get things done and to succeed beyond what they thought possible.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Love it. Love it. He was my neighbor on the Upper West Side for years. I used to see him at the grocery store. Yeah, I love his books and his perspective that he shares. And I do agree and believe that, leaders' jobs are to help other people do their jobs better. They're not to do the job. And I alluded to that earlier. But the collection of individuals, when motivated and inspired the right way, is infinitely more capable than any manager or leader. And so, I do believe that a leader's job is to get the best out of their people. One of the most favorite parts of my job, my career, and I keep a collection of these names, here on my desk. But people who I've helped do unbelievable things or things they didn't believe was possible, and change their career or life trajectory, and then in turn watch those people offer that to folks that they're leading, and to just see the ripple effect and the amplification effect of that is super satisfying. But that's one of the most satisfying parts of my job. That's why I do this job. When I was years ago, I used to do a lot of coaching conversations, and folks say, "Hey, I want to be a sales leader. What do you think?" And I'd ask one question: "Well, why do you want to be a sales leader?" "Oh, because it's the next logical progression of my career." And I said, "Maybe not for you. If your answer is some version of I want to help people, or I enjoy helping people do things they didn't think was possible, or I enjoy helping people be the best they can be, or I get satisfaction out of helping people." Those are probably better reasons to go become a leader. If it's the next logical progression in your career, may not be the most satisfying career move for you, if you're looking at it through that lens.
Start with why. Peel back the onion
Number,
from there.
number three TED Talk of all time.
Is that on the ranking system as
It
number
is
three?
number three.
Can you talk a little bit more? You said you keep a list on your desk of names of people uh, that you've helped do some excellent things beyond their imagination, and they've gone on and did the same. Do you do something with that list, or is it just there as a reminder?
It's a reminder, but when I see the names, it reminds me of the things that we worked through together. And so always adding to that list. And I was thinking over the weekend a little bit about some couple folks that I've recently met who are probably getting added to that list, as we work through a couple things. And the reason I started doing it years ago is because it reminded me of, well, hey, this was a particular challenge that person was dealing with, or this is a certain superpower that person had. It reminds me to draw out that superpower in the other folks I may be coaching. It reminds me of maybe some of the challenges or rough spots we had to work through together. And so it serves as a reminder. It's also a little bit of a sort of a greatest hits kind of list for me about some of the people I've been proudest to work with, and have helped deliver amazing accomplishments. It serves as a source of inspiration for me, to be able to kind of think about how my impact has been helpful to others and how it's been helpful to the companies I've worked for. And it's something that I think about, adding more folks to it. It's motivation for me to, help other folks, do things they didn't think was possible that are really, really great and important. And so, it serves a bunch of functions for me. Tactically, it's a guide on coaching. Maybe philosophically, it's inspiration and motivation for me.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever heard it boiled down that tactically that you have the list.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
not a
think
big
that's
list.
really, really,
These are probably 10 people that have done like absolutely amazing things. So it's a very exclusive group. But if you balled up their accomplishments, they probably rival some of the best of some of the best companies in the world. These 10 folks, they've done some amazing things.
that's awesome. I was going to ask you how many people are on the list. You said 10.
Uh,
Do these people know that there's this list and that they're on it?
They do now.
Yeah. No. Well, what are their names? No, just kidding. All right. So, um, Mark, let's pivot a little bit. You're now a go-to-market leader, chief revenue officer at SalesLoft. I think most of this audience knows what SalesLoft does, but you know what? Maybe not. Can you talk about what does SalesLoft do, and then what excited you most about the opportunity that compelled you to join the company?
Yeah. SalesLoft is a revenue orchestration platform, and what that means is we help sellers sell more effectively to meet buyers where they are. And what that means is, these days buyers are 60, 70, 80% of the way through the buying process before they engage a salesperson, and that number is going up and up and up and up every year. And so at some point, that 70% is going to become 80, going to become 90, and at some point, our buyers maybe having completely digital purchasing experiences. That comes with some opportunity. It's a lower cost to serve buyers like that, but there's a quality challenge that happens. There's a real issue with customers going through that buying process without being guided through a human assisted channel. And in B2B SaaS, you can make the wrong decision, You can make a decision that doesn't quite comprehend or contemplate the entirety of the challenges you're going to see and experience. And the way I would make that real is, I just got off the phone with a customer a little while ago, and they said, "Look, we're going to revamp our entire, revenue tech stack, and here's how we're thinking about doing it." And they said, "Well, this is the first time we've done it. You guys may have done this more often than we have." And I said, "In fact, we do this probably 100 times a day with our customers over the past, 10 plus years. So yeah, we've done this literally millions of times." And so what we bring to the table is that depth and breadth of experience of having done this over and over and over again. And so what SalesLoft seeks to do is to bring together the best of that human experience and the best of that digital experience, because customers prefer the digital experience, oftentimes because they can go at their own pace. They can avoid some of the pitching and selling that can happen early on. To some of the early comments you made, salespeople showing up and throwing up, or some of those behaviors, they can avoid all that when they go on a digital journey. And that's part of the reason why they're doing that. So our mission is to help meet the buyer where they are, right? And so we don't want to show up and throw up. We want to engage the buyer when and where and how they're ready to be engaged. So we capture every digital signal that customers give off that around intent, that happens in a bunch of different modalities. We acquired Drift earlier this year, and Drift is a conversational marketing platform that allows us to listen to the entirety of the market and bring those signals into our platform, and tell the buyer, or tell the salesperson when and where and how to engage that buyer. So it gives the buyer a better experience because we're meeting them where they are. That's really the essence of what the platform does. We are moving from a point product offering, which we are category creators in cadences, into this platform approach where we're taking in intent signals. We're driving really, really structured workflows to ensure that our sellers are delivering the right sales process. So if you're a medic shop or a med pick shop, we can run the medic or med pick process right inside of our platform, reinforcing that structure with the salesperson. At the same time, taking in all of the dynamic signals that those buyers are giving off so we can meet the customer right where they are. We capture all the conversations and interaction data to allow us to understand where we are in the process. I love CI because it's conversational intelligence, just like watching game film for the individual. But at my level, I get to see how the sales organism, is shaping and moving. So when I make an investment in sales enablement, or we build a new product, or we're trying to coach our teams to do something different, I get to see how the organization is changing over a period of time, not just the individual, but the entire organization. I can get to know when and how my investments in enablement are paying off. Are they paying off in different geographies or different segments in different ways than they are in others? And then it gives me the opportunity to ask those questions in terms of why. Helps me coach my leaders better and determine where and when I want to make other investments to drive the most efficacy. And so that's really what the SalesLoft revenue orchestration platform does. Helps the sales organization meet the buyer where they are, and helps the leaders understand exactly how their investments in sales are paying off, and where you might want to adjust some of those investments.
And you provided a lot of color and background on that, and so you may have answered the question therein. But what are you most excited about, like in terms of like what you? I'm sure you had a lot of opportunities. You decided to go with SalesLoft. Was there one particular reason, or can you shed some light on that?
Well, it is a particular reason. It's a funny story. My wife actually told me to do it.
Happy wife, happy life. Smart man. Okay.
That's all anybody needs to hear. She had told me that she was using it in a pilot, and was super happy with it. And she's not necessarily the kind of person that is effusive about B2B SaaS. Let's just say that. And I said to her, "Why are you so excited about this?" She tells me, "This platform tells me exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why to do it. And it's helped me close a bunch of deals in the past month that I didn't think I'd be able to close." She was in a 3-month pilot. And so I got a demo. She went back to the house. We were walking the dog that day. I got a demo, and she showed me how she was using it, and I was blown away. She and her team were so excited for having this capability. And eventually, through some mutual colleagues, I got in touch with David and started talking about his interest in building this business into more of a platform business, reshaping and reorganizing the sales team into one that solves higher order problems, building more scale, enterprise grade durability into the business, delivering a stronger revenue foundation to continue to grow and invest in the business. And he and I have some shared experience in the past, and really, really thought this was a wonderful place to take the next step in my career. And with that endorsement from one of their prospects who turned customer, and some of the things David and I were both aligned on in terms of how to run and grow and evolve a sales organization, it just felt like the right fit, and it's been a blast. I've been here about 6 months, and just having a great time.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing. I'm glad I asked the question too. So, Mark, the show is called Coach2Scale. So we're looking to build a community of like-minded individuals who care about achieving success through others, growing a business through people, right? Coaching and developing people, and
Yeah.
usually people like yourself who care about that had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who is that? Can you share an example of someone whose coaching
Yeah.
has had an impact on your career?
Many people. It starts when I was a kid in Little League. I remember this coach. I can't think of his name right now, but he was such a wonderful coach, and was able to get me to do things that others weren't able to do. And it's because the way he spoke to me, and the way he connected. And I think about those experiences often. It was T-ball, so it was a minute ago. But I think about that engagement. I think about how my father was talking to me about how his coaching helped me get better, in how he observed that as a spectator watching me play. Later in my career, I had an opportunity to meet a guy who's my mentor today. I met him, let's see, 22 or 3 years ago. I was working in tech sales. I was struggling to really know and understand the buyer's mentality. And I think understanding sort of both sides of the table is super important. And in sales, we don't often have a chance to become the buyer, or to understand the pressures the buyer is under, which are oftentimes as big as or bigger than the pressures of the salesperson under. Most times, sellers don't realize that the buyer has pressures on them as well. And so I wanted to spend some time learning that. I had the great fortune to get introduced to a guy. His name was Mark Kaplan. Like I said, I still speak to him probably every day. He was my boss. He hired me at the Associated Press when I took a little time out of my sales career. And he said to me, what can I help you with? And I said, I want to learn why companies make buying decisions. And he said, well, I need somebody who can run this little technology business we have. Would you be interested in running this little tech business? It's a $10 million revenue line. In turn, we'll have you work with corporate finance and procurement to learn how we're going to make buying decisions. Sounds great to me. I was probably 24, 25 at the time. So I spent 2 years doing that. And his coaching and guidance, I speak to him probably still every day. His coaching guidance over the past 20 years has been probably the most foundational experience for me. He's an industrial psychologist and has been a consultant at some of the biggest companies. He's now a CEO of his own company, but just takes an approach around listening and sort of being empathetic and coaching and understanding that I find to be particularly helpful. So I think everybody has to find a mentor like that. Hopefully,
Yeah.
folks do. The engagement style and approach I find to be particularly helpful. There's a lot of smart people out there, but is that intellect, are their smarts going to translate through your personality and their personality? And in this case, I feel like I was very fortunate in making that connection. I've had other folks over the years be massively influential in how I've built skills and experiences over the past probably 10 or 15 years, who've provided much more maybe tactical guidance around how to do these jobs. My relationship with Mark is much more sort of philosophical around how to lead and how to manage and how to be the most impactful sort of force multiplier I can be.
Well, what an incredible story. This Many people have come on the show and talked about the importance of finding a mentor and having a mentor. But something that you said, I think at least twice, was that you talk to Mark almost every day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that sounds immensely special and powerful
Oh yeah.
to speak with someone that you view as a mentor every single, a lot, like
Yeah.
almost every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's off the charts.
Over the years, our
Um,
relationship has evolved.
yeah,
It's not somebody who he's not technology isn't necessarily native. So sometimes I'm the coach sometimes in terms of
yeah.
understanding B2B SaaS. And so he's a buyer of our technologies often in different roles he's had. So I've provided some coaching back in that regard. But yeah, we talk Yeah, probably, yeah, probably every day, if not, a couple times a day, for different things, whether it's questions about talent or people or approach, or questions about, how we can do something different or better in our business or his business. But yeah, it's been a wonderful relationship.
That super special.
Yeah.
Mark, following the thread of coaching a little bit, let's bring it up to uh, names that many people would know the name. It doesn't have to be sports, but maybe names. Again, most people would know. Who's someone that you would describe as one of your favorite coaches out there in the celebrity world, and what is an attribute of that person that you admire?
Yeah. Well, based on the conversation you and I had before we started recording, this may or may not surprise you, but I think Bill Belichick is probably the most in my view the most iconic coach out there, and not because I'm a fan of the Patriots or any of the things in his professional career, but he's a student of the game, and he's somebody who thinks deeply about his craft, and who brings all of that knowledge and experience to his teams in service of winning every day and making those teams as effective as possible. And so I think the approach he takes to learning and listening and understanding and synthesizing information and experiences is second to none. And the results speak for themselves over many years of his career. But he's somebody I oftentimes think of as one of the greatest sort of students of the game, who has a lot to offer in terms of philosophy and approach as a coach.
All right. And I get accused a lot. People text me or call me or chime in somewhere and call me a homer because I'm from Boston. Even though I don't live in Boston anymore, but I'm from Boston. But I want to let the record show that someone who is not a native Bostonian
Yes.
named Bill Belichick as their favorite coach. Um, it, as we pivot and close here, Mark, if you're put on the spot and they said, Mark, we need you to come to whatever Las Vegas and give a keynote speech for this organization of sales leaders and salespeople, and you have to pick any topic you want and do a TED Talk style, like whatever, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, short talk on a subject. What would the subject be and why?
I think it'd be on listening. Um, I think listening deeply is something that we oftentimes skip over. I think we listen in a very cursory way. We listen to respond versus listen to understand, and I think that's only getting worse. You could certainly look at blame the smart technologies out there, but or the idea, the concept that's been popularized in the past, I don't know, 10 years about hacking the job, hacking the role, hacking whatever. I think that oftentimes that hacking sort of approach or mentality misses the real purpose of doing what we do, and I think that has influenced how folks show up in their job, and I think that's a ultimately an approach that will lead to more long term failure than success. Short term may help me get a deal here and there, but will it deliver me a durable customer? Maybe not. So I think that's one, is listening deeply. And the other one's asking better questions. And those two go hand in hand. So when you listen deeply and you listen to understand, you're in a position to ask better, more thoughtful, more provocative questions. When you're listening to respond, or you're listening to hack the job or the thing, you're not able to ask super deep questions. So I think those two things go hand in hand. Deep listening and asking better questions are the things I would talk about.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And when we first met, had our initial conversation, you held up a couple of books that were incredibly important to you. One of them was a sales related book, but the other one was the book of the best dad jokes.
Yeah.
Now, you have a favorite dad joke that you're willing to share?
I don't have any favorites, but I'll just open to a random page of the book and I'll offer you one here.
Random page. All right.
Page.
Point to it.
Let's see. Oof, this is a good one. What's the vampire's favorite part of a horse race? When it's neck and neck.
I heard one fairly recently. Knowing I was going to ask you this question, I should have prepared it better. But it was dad. I have Superman and I. One common attribute is supervision. Superman has supervision, and I require supervision. All right. It's not
Hey,
delivered well.
they make you laugh all the time. Dad jokes are great.
That's right. Well, Mark, with that, I think that's a great place to stop. We covered a lot of ground here. We talked about, we're a little provocative. It's sales is not your job as a salesperson, and you unpack that a lot. We talked about the importance of problem solving. We went psychologically deep with Maslow's hierarchy. We talked about the importance of listening and asking deeper questions and how those two are related. So I really appreciate the time you spent with me and with the audience today.
Awesome. Matt, thanks so much. This was a wonderful experience. I really appreciate it.
All right. For everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing so. If you're doing it on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're on LinkedIn, hit the like button if you like it. More importantly, engage. Let us know what you'd like. Let us know what you'd like to see more of. We want to bring interesting guests with different perspectives who can also provide actionable ideas and techniques that can help you do what you do better and with more ease and with less stress. So thanks for all of you out there. I appreciate you. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.